I wanted to thank everyone for joining us tonight, making sure Dawn's around as well. We're excited's the wrong word for this conversation tonight, but I think this has been something we felt like we've been building towards for quite some time. For those of you who this isn't your first webinar, know that we've been kind of following this issue about how the Ontario government has been making changes to conservation authorities, and how we as a community and how communities across the province were largely pushing back against some major development. And through past webinars and discussions, we've looked at the trends in those developments. We've seen that these are generally high ticket donors, land developers, folks who own this land and who are selling it just to make money. We locally here in Hamilton just ran a campaign through the Stop Sprawl Coalition with Action 13 and Hamilton 350 to save the Ancaster Creek Garner Road wetland from being paved over from a developer who was reaching out to the Hamilton Conservation Authority to seek a permit to just slide it over. And so I think as we followed these development projects, it's been really important for us to kind of not just hold ground and not just kind of resist kind of these changes for the worse, but to really ask in a time of such crisis and with such, it feels in many ways like despair all around us, isn't now the time to build something better? Or isn't now the time to be pushing forward, not just kind of holding off developers? And so in doing that, we've kind of been thinking about what that looks like. And at the same time, of course, Indigenous resistance across what we call Canada, across Turtle Island, has really just had year after year of movement building. And from Idle No More, I remember being like a teenager then, and that's kind of what I've been growing up with. And that's some of the context that Alex, joining us tonight. And so, of course, what I'm building to is it a discovery? Like the mass understanding and the mass recognition of what so many have already been, which is that residential schools in Canada have been a tool of genocide. Entire generations of communities have been stolen. I think it would be like to grow up in a community where everyone younger than myself, all the children are taken away. And that's what, like the numbers that we're seeing now, that's the level of what we're talking about. And I think as we dive in, tomorrow's Canada Day, and sorry for the somber start to this, but I think it's really important that we really ground where we're coming from tonight. And so we want to kind of begin that journey for 350, the work's already been going on, but as 350, we're looking to kind of pivot to looking beyond sprawl and looking at some of the causes of sprawl that are consistent throughout kind of the colonial structures of Canada. And in talking about that, we have to talk about how residential schools were one of the tools used to dispossess Indigenous communities of their land, that these now developers own and are selling for top dollar. And, if you've been following us, we've been covering the nuances of that. So Dawn, are you okay to introduce the next piece that we have? I believe we just want to play a poem before we start tonight. And then I think we'll talk a little bit more. And of course, we'll play this poem, but this is a good time to say, just some basic Zoom etiquette, things that we've been going through before. You've been muted. If for whatever reason you come off unmute and there's a dog barking or a telephone, we might just give you a mute. This is being recorded. You'll have got a notification when you joined that is the case. We do this just so we can share it with others afterwards. So feel free to turn your video off if that makes you more comfortable. And if you have any questions, feel free to get in touch with Steph, who's going to post maybe a better email to reach her at in the chat. But yeah, either reaching out to Steph as named or over email if you are having any access or participation concerns. And yeah, Dawn, are you okay to introduce our next piece? And you're just on mute, sorry, Dawn.
Yes, that's a good point. Yes, thanks, Alex. And a warning that the poem that we are chosen to start with is about the residential schools. It's a poem by Dennis Saddleman called Monster. It is not easy to hear. It may to hear some who are hearing this, even if it's not for the first time. We wanted to emphasize that the crimes that are being uncovered almost on a daily basis now have to be confronted and recognized, and we need to look squarely at what kind of a society this country has, what it has done, what crimes that have been committed in the name of Canada, our role, our personal roles in these things. So we wanted to begin by rebroadcasting this poem, which originally appeared on, or to our knowledge, on CBC about 3 weeks ago. It's called Monsters by Dan Sandelman. And I'm hoping that that is going to be.
Yeah, we just switched last time our internet crashed here because we had multiple people doing once. So we're just trying to change it out. So I'm happy to play it from my computer right now. And then Nancy, are you okay to go back to the slideshow after that?
Okay. Thanks, Alex.
Not hearing it, Alex.
Sorry, what was that, folks?
I don't hear it. I don't know if anybody else does, but I couldn't hear it.
No, it's, yeah.
Okay. Sorry, folks. And you'd think that after the number of webinars we've done, we would have figured out all the intricacies of Zoom, but I promise it does change depending on what type of media you're sharing. So what we can do is we can link this in the chat. Nancy, if it plays better on yours, it is in the slideshow linked, but if that's not something that can happen right now, I'll be sure to post the link in the chat. We recommend folks do try and engage with this over the next couple of days if they can. And yeah, if so, Nancy, I don't know if you want to give this a brief try and then we can move forward.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, Alex. Not sure where it is. Maybe we can come back to it though.
Yeah,
let's try to come back to it.
Yeah, so sorry about the technical difficulties at the beginning, folks. As we said, we're looking tonight to go from sprawl, spelt with a little $sign, to lift. To start us off at the beginning of this story that we'd like to kind of go into tonight, we actually have Nancy from the Stop Sprawl Coalition, who's been kind enough to kind of summarize some of the work that has been going on by folks in Hamilton with respect to the issue of sprawl, some of the pushback that's happened, and some of the options that you, as maybe a resident of Hamilton joining us on the call tonight, have in front of you to kind of have a say in where this is going. So Nancy, I'd love to pass it on to you.
Let's see if we can get it together. Thank you. Okay, are you seeing a Stop Sprawl slide here?
You're good.
Okay, super. Okay, hello everyone, and thank you for attending tonight. I'm Nancy from Stop Sprawl, Hammond. We are a grassroots organization put together as a group of concerned citizens from all across the city. We've come together with the common goal of stopping Hamilton's proposed urban boundary expansion. This expansion is designed to convert thousands of acres of agricultural land surrounding Hamilton to urban use. And it's being vehemently pushed by developers who have prematurely bought out the lands previously occupied by Hamilton farmers for the purpose of cashing in on increased land prices. This is a map of what Stop Sprawl Hammond is trying to save. The areas in white, except for the land surrounding the airport, are farms that are currently at risk of being paved over for subdivision. The city staff is recommending that council approve a plan to convert 84% of these white belt areas into suburbia, amounting to the loss of 3,300 acres of productive farmland, habitat, and wetlands all across the Hamilton Mountain. The largest parcel of farmland is right here, Elfrida. It's near, as you can see, Mud Street, just on the other side of the Red Hill. What is known as the Elfrida Growth Area is a parcel of currently farmed land, which is 3,100 acres large and 6 kilometers wide along its southern border. That's half the length of the Lincoln Alexander Parkway. So it's huge. And if the urban boundary expansion goes through, this will be the largest and most devastating loss of fertile land of all. There are 2 or 3 other areas, but this is the largest one. So this soil map demonstrates the excellent soil quality of Elfrida. You can see Elfrida is outlined in blue, and this soil map is from the Ministry of Food, Ag, and Rural Affairs. Elfrida is comprised almost totally of Prime 1 soil, the very best soil found in Canada, and only 5% of the Canadian landmass is actually farmable. Soil is often treated like dirt, and while it's a precious resource and it's finite. It's a living organism that has formed over centuries, and plants only grow in topsoil. So it's estimated that we have only 60 years of topsoil left. 70% of topsoil has been lost to erosion, runoff, and degradation, and we must preserve it. And what's it been lost to? For housing estates on the outskirts of the cities that most of us actually can't afford. Developers try to say that more housing supply will bring down prices, but affordable housing doesn't happen in large estates in the suburbs. The vast majority of developers aren't in the affordable housing game. I'm going to skip that one. Hamilton has plenty of empty and underutilized space to develop. This is a map of surface parking and vacant or underutilized lots in the central Hamilton neighborhood. It demonstrates the abundance of space we have to grow already within our current urban boundary. Far too many neighborhoods in our community are underfunded, underbuilt, and lack affordable housing and basic amenities like decent transit or grocery stores within walking distance. And how can it be thought that paving over our precious farmland, our wetlands, and our wildlife habitat is preferable to investing in our already existing neighborhoods? This month, the City of Hamilton mailed all Hamilton households a paper survey that looks like this, asking how we want to accommodate growth for our city. It's either sprawl or don't sprawl. And if you, like many of us, either didn't get their survey in the mail or you inadvertently threw it away thinking it was junk mail because it came along with the pizza and realtor flyers like mine did, then don't despair. Our group has partnered with Wellington Water Watchers to create a simple online fill-in form that will email your choice of option 2, no boundary expansion, directly to the city. Every citizen in Hamilton is entitled to fill out their own email form and send it to Town Hall to have their voice heard. Whereas with the paper surveys, only 1 per household, if that, was sent out. Finally, we have yard signs available. So if you're interested in having one, then please go to our website. We have the simplest website on the planet. It's SSHO, stopsprawlhamont.ca, SSHO.ca. And if you want to sign, just click on the Contact Us link, give us your name, your address, your ward number, and we will do our best to get them to you as we have them printed. Thank you so much to those of you all over the city who have requested signs and who have also donated to our GoFundMe to help us buy more signs, print posters, and spread the word about the urban boundary expansion. So just to conclude, I want to share a quick story, which Alex already alluded to earlier, about public engagement, and it is to do with the Ancaster wetland, which, as Alex said, was at risk of being paved to make way for warehousing. But luckily, a huge public outcry ensued, and the outcome was that the permit to pave the wetland was denied. And it would likely not have been the same happy outcome if people didn't get involved. So we do encourage you, please email your counselor, tell your neighbors about this, get a yard sign, or donate to our GoFundMe. Or you can do all of the above, because it's all of us together that is really going to make a difference. So I'm going to do something a little different right now, and I hope it works because it's technological. I'm going to help you all to do item number 3 on the list, which is to email your counselor. So anyone who hasn't yet sent out your survey choice, either through the paper survey if you received it, or through the link that we've provided, which will send the email saying that you prefer option 2. I'm going to invite you right now to put down your drink that you're holding or stop eating your dinner for a sec and open up a new browser, a new tab, and go over to our website. And we're going to fill in the paper survey together, or the online survey together. So let's see if this works. Okay, so here's our website. It's ssho.ca. Once you get here, this is what it looks like. All volunteer created, and they've done a fantastic job, I have to say. If you want to donate to our GoFundMe to help with signs, this is the button. Resources tells you a little bit more information. Allies is who's with us. Contact us over here is how you can get a lawn sign if you would like one. And then down here, tell the city your choice is option number 2, no boundary expansion. And then we're going to click here, and it takes you right to our form. Simple. Fill in your name, first name, last name, your email, your address, and your postal code, your province, your postal code again, because that's actually important to do it twice. And then there's a little very brief email, because so far council has received, I think, about 1,200 of these. 1,200 people have used this tool already, and they're not opening these emails. But in the subject line, it says, I choose option 2. I hope you'll then actually click the yes button over here so that you can keep receiving updates from us, and then pop your send email now button, and that's it. You have voted, in case you didn't get a paper survey. And if you've already done it and there's somebody in your household who would also like to have a go, then here's the link. So once again, you can easily find it on our website, ssho.ca. And then if you're all finished with that, it would be really wonderful if you could pop it in the chat and just say, hey, I filled in the form, or all done. And it would be great to see a few of those in the chat. And that's it. I thank you for coming tonight. And I thank you all for caring about our farmland, our wetlands, our habitat, and being engaged. We have until July 23rd to respond to the city survey. Okay, and now just to finish, I don't know if any of you are familiar with Manor Run Farms, but it's a farm just outside, it's in Ancaster. It's a beautiful farm owned by an Ancaster family. They've been farming the land for a number of years. And we were lucky enough to go there and interview Chris Kruker, the farmer who runs the land. And I have a little video from him, which I hope will play. Let me just rewind it. Oh, there, it's working. Tell me if you can hear it.
He has a dog.
Oh, that's somebody else. That's somebody.
Sorry, Nancy, there is no sound. When you share, there's a little share your sound button in the lower left corner. Looks like Summer's with you here. So while she's just working on that, everyone, I just want to let you know, in case you weren't able to follow Nancy while she was walking you through that step-by-step process for this online survey, I have put it in the chat a couple times. I'll put a link again now that I'm talking about it, just so you can see it. And that way, if you weren't able to follow Nancy along there, it'll be in the chat. It'll also be in the resource document that comes out after the webinar.
We're struggling along here.
Good, Nancy.
Okay, we're working on it. Do you hear chickens?
My name's Chris Kruker. I've been farming in rural Lancaster with my family for 25
new.
years. We grow vegetables and we also have livestock, cows, pigs, and chickens.
Yes.
So we're mimicking ecological systems. And so what you see behind us is a field, but it's not as traditional as you would find in other fields because we've planted trees and shrubs every 100 feet. What we're doing is we're stacking food. It gives us an opportunity to graze animals, to grow vegetables, but at the same time have other types of food such as berries, nut trees, and food also just for diversity for wild species. Something to keep in mind is that there's a relationship between the clouds and whatever's in the fauna, the plant life. And my understanding is that grasslands and forests call down rain. And when you take those things away, the clouds pass over. And that's why you have a desert. So if there's nowhere for the rain to stay, if there's no soil to absorb it, if there's no root systems to bring it up, there's no leaves with photosynthesis, then you're basically moving very quickly toward a desert. We have had this happen over the millennium in different parts of the world, Mesoamerica, Persia, South Asia, where we shouldn't go too far down this road, where basically their ecosystems became destabilized. And we want to be careful. It's fragile, and we want to keep the rain coming. The Ontario Federation of Agriculture has an official policy to not expand the urban boundary for Hamilton. Urban sprawl takes food land out of production. And we have a large population, and we need to eat. And our well-being as organisms is directly connected to how far our food is from where we live. So taking away prime agricultural farmland in Hamilton, where we have a good climate, we have good temperature, we have adequate rainfall, that's problematic. Canada doesn't have a lot of that kind of farmland. So there is land around Hamilton that is excellent for growing vegetables. That would also be in the Elfrida area as well. It may be a little more mixed as far as soil qualities, but there's other things to grow as well. I just happen to grow vegetables, and sandy soil is excellent for that. Well, we've gone through a couple hundred years at least of cities becoming larger. And when you pave over land, you don't get it back. You put in basements and parking lots and grocery stores. I mean, I'm not suggesting we don't need those things, but we've taken away so much farmland that it's becoming questionable whether we can feed our own population. We're seeing food prices go up, and we're seeing governments around the world creating strategies, figuring out ways to feed their population by going to other countries and buying land. And so Canada needs to reassess its capacity to feed its population. We've seen those food prices go up, and we've seen significant political turmoil in different parts of the world related to food prices. Another problem with urban sprawl is that it introduces speculation on land. And we're seeing that particularly in the last 12 months, if not 2 years, in the Hamilton area, where land prices have gone from $10,000 an acre, well over 30, 40, or 50,000 an acre. And so it's made it too expensive for someone to go to the bank, get a mortgage, and farm. So sometimes we think just because the grocery store has every kind of vegetable and every kind of fruit 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, that we're eating well. In reality, we need to be eating food that's nutrient dense and that hasn't traveled across the world. And so that's why it's important to have farmland right here, as opposed to relying only on a global food system. As organisms, if we don't eat well, then we're not as healthy, and we're seeing now the impact of things like low nutrient or poor nutrient food. So I don't think we can separate out something like COVID-19 from diet, and that's connected to farmland. So farmland is a significant carbon sink. It's considered one of the ways that we can take carbon out of the atmosphere and hold it, thereby cooling the planet. And that's another crisis that we're facing. We're all well aware that we have this thing called global warming, and it's creating quite varied weather patterns, which is then impacting our capacity to grow food. Also, think about it this way. If you pave over all this land, where does the rain go? It goes into the sewer system, ends up in some sort of large aqueducts, and right into the lakes. It doesn't get held up and used in the soil for plant life. So this is not just a farmer's issue. This isn't just about, can I keep being a farmer? We all need to eat. We all need to eat healthy. And we need to begin to preserve the farmland around us. For too long, we've just gone down the development route. And there's a reason why we have things like the green belt and the white belt. And that's to protect our urban areas and the people that live in those urban areas. So there's a survey coming out. I read the 2 questions. And as I understand it, there is an either-or option here. You either stop developing the way we've been developing, or you move on quickly and continue to do development the way things have been done. That's not as clear in the way the questions are written. It's an either-or at this point. There needs to be a stop to the type of development they're proposing, and there needs to be a new way to think about how we're going to live.
Thank you so much for that, Nancy. I think what we'll do here now is we do have a way to play the poem from earlier. So while this is kind of in our mind and while we just have what Chris has said, which is we need a new way forward, we need something new. Dawn, I just wanted to ask you a little bit about kind of that connection between, moving from a conversation of sprawl towards a conversation of land back. What do you see as some of the connections there?
First of all, if we're going to play the poem, then we need to again remind our viewers that this is a very hard poem. It is speaking to the issue of what crimes were committed in the name of residential schooling, committed against the Indigenous people of our continent, and it's something that we have some Indigenous guests here tonight, so it may be especially hard for them, and we want to ensure that there is a fair warning about that. In terms of connecting the Landback movement, the Indigenous rights movement that is growing every day and being recognized as much more even than just trying to push back against the colonial activities that have been the central feature of our Canadian experience. This movement that Nancy is describing to fight sprawl is in fact, I think, connected to a different vision of the world, a different vision of Canada and which way we go, a vision that rejects extractivist mentality that has dominated, and which is reflected in the idea that you can take food land, you can take wetlands, you can take natural areas, and you can convert them to dollars. And you can do that not for the benefit of the public at large, but for the benefit of whoever has been able to get their hands on a deed for those lands and a permit to proceed with the destruction that sprawl has presented to us, and which has been, in fact, devastating the landscape across the country since the beginning of colonialism in Canada. So there is, as we're well aware, a growing recognition that Indigenous rights have been trampled, and that has to change, and has to change now. And that, in fact, the Indigenous vision of and approach to the lands and waters is, in fact, the kind of vision that we all need to be embracing. And the effort to stop sprawl, the effort to protect the wetland in Ancaster, these various efforts, they do actually connect very well to a vision of the land and the waters as sacred, as fundamental to our existence and the existence of other species, that ecological integrity is what we have been devastating for far too long, and we're paying a price for that. And climate change is one of the prices we're paying for that. Loss of foodlands is another price we're paying for that. The devastation of many other species and extinction of many species is a price that we're paying for that. And those prices are far too high, and they identify that we have gone in the wrong direction. So I'm hoping that our webinars are helping us explore how to change that course, how to move away from the extractivist approach to our lands and waters to an approach which recognizes and defends and preserves and enhances their ecological integrity. So I hope that answers the question you're raising, Alex.
Yeah, why don't, Brody, are you okay? Thank you, Brody.
Before we start playing this, please, Dawn, could you repeat the very beginning of that message? There were a couple people joining the meeting after you began the warning, just so they are aware of what's about to happen here.
So we are about to play a poem that we wanted to play at the beginning of the webinar. It's a poem that was written by and is being presented here by Dennis Sandelman, an Indigenous man speaking about the residential school experience. The poem is called Monster. It's a hard poem to listen to, but it's a kind of thing that I think it's important that we confront as Canadians, as people who have been part of this monster and are dedicated to changing that course. We tried before and this didn't work. Is it going to work this time? No.
Don, I think probably Brody has shared his screen without specifying that he needs to share his audio.
We can try it if you like.
Thanks, Nancy.
Okay, we're working on it.
I hate you, residential school. I hate you. You're a monster, a huge, hungry monster built with steel bones, built with cement flesh. You're a monster built to devour innocent Native children. You're a cold-hearted monster, cold as the cement floors. You have no love, no gentle atmosphere. Your ugly face grooved with red bricks. Your monster eyes glare from grimy windows. Monster eyes so evil. Monster eyes watching terrified children cower with shame. I hate you, residential school. I hate you. You're a slimy monster, oozing in the shadows of my past. Go away, leave me alone. You're following me wherever I go. You're in my dreams, in my memories. Go away, monster, go away. I hate you following me. I hate you, residential school. I hate you. You're a monster with huge, watery mouth of double doors. Your wide mouth took me. Your yellow-stained teeth chewed the Indian out of me. Your teeth crunched my language, grinded my rituals and my traditions. Your taste buds became bitter. When you tasted my red skin, you swallowed me with disgust. Your face wrinkled when you tasted my strong pride. I hate you, residential school. I hate you. You're a monster. Your throat muscles forced me down to your stomach. Your throat muscles squeezed my happiness, squeezed my dreams, and squeezed my native voice. Your throat became clawed with my sacred spirit. You coughed and you choked where you cannot withstand my spiritual songs and dances. I hate you, residential school. I hate you. You're a monster. Your stomach upset every time I wet my bed. Your stomach rumbled with anger every time I fell asleep in church. Your stomach growled at me every time I broke the school rules. Your stomach was full. You burped. You felt satisfied. You rubbed your belly and you didn't care. You didn't care how you ate up my native culture, and you didn't care if you were Missy, if you were Piggy. You didn't care as long as you ate up my Indianness. I hate you, residential school. I hate you. You're a monster. Your veins clotted with cruelty and torture. Your blood poisoned with loneliness and despair. Your heart was cold. It pumped fear into me. I hate you, residential school. I hate you. You're a monster. Your intestines turned me into foul entrails. Your anal squeezed me, squeezed my confidence, squeezed my self-respect. Your anal squeezed, and then you dumped me without parental skills, without life skills. Dumped me without any form of character, without individual talents, without a hope for success. I hate you, residential school. I hate you. You're a monster. You dumped me in the toilet, then you flush out my good nature, my personalities. I hate you, residential school. I hate you. You're a monster. I hate you.
I think we wanted to start with this earlier today, but I think it's just, as we sit with this and as we think about this, and as tomorrow is Canada Day and many of us may be enjoying a day off work or enjoying kind of some of the other ways, I think it is hard to not see how the fundamental contradictions with which we've been told. I know I speak to this as kind of a younger person on the call, and the education I've received in schools is probably very different than the education folks 3 years before or after me received. And I think it shows that we're in a point of change, but change for who and change how, I think, are some of the questions that are really top of mind. I think we've seen people move towards talking about this history without working to change it. And that acknowledgement is not the same as action. So as we think about that, hopefully this difference between acknowledgement and action is something we can talk about and think about tomorrow in our lives. But also, Steph, if you could be so kind as to share a petition. Urban Indigenous advocates in the city of Hamilton, the Hamilton Center for Civic Inclusion, are released a petition regarding the Sir John A. Macdonald statue in Gore Park in downtown Hamilton, and taking that down. It's been, I think we've seen the power of monuments to kind of build this country, and how they collectively shape the stories we tell ourselves about it. And so reckoning with those monuments is something that's more important than ever. And so that petition's been shared. We'll send it out on the action sheet as well. But we do want to talk about what some of that action could look like. And we're so lucky to be joined with folks from Hamilton and the surrounding region who have been really leading stories of resistance different futures, different ways that we can see and understand what's going on around us that have always been here and persevered, and how really, the country that we're in, this place we call Canada, has been made through colonization, but it's also been made through resistance to colonization as well. And that's shaped how and what goes on here. So we are hoping to talk about 3 stories tonight and 3 experiences. We're hoping to talk to Danielle Boissoneau from the Hamilton Water Walkers around Cootes Paradise and some of the work going on with protecting Cootes Paradise and the water that runs through Hamilton and into Lake Ontario. We're hoping to talk to Makaśa Looking Horse from some of the work to rematriate the formerly Nestle, now Blue Trident Waters plant in the Aberfoyle Guelph area. And I believe we also have Skyler Williams to talk about some of the work going on in, what some people may call Mackenzie Meadows, but I think all of us have come to know lovingly as Landback Lane. So Danielle, are you okay to join us and turn your screen on if you're with us?
Hi there.
Hi, Danielle.
Hi.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I think one of the things that we've been talking about a lot at the 350 table is we've been following these kind of stories of conservation, and we've really been looking at conservation authorities. But you've been doing this work irrespective of kind of what the ministry or what policy may dictate. And when it comes to the sewage spill, it's not just one spill, it's like ongoing contamination of Cootes Paradise with sewage. Specifically, you are really one of the first people, and you and some other folks that you've been working with were some of the first people to raise the alarm and to be ignored by the city of Hamilton and by the ministry and by all those kind of quote unquote official channels. Are you okay to share with us tonight some of your experiences and the work that you're doing to protect the water here in Hamilton?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. It's really great to see everybody out with a sort of common vision and goal of protecting the land and the water. And I think that's something that we can all say that we're working towards. And so I'm grateful to be here with you all. In terms of my work with Hamilton Harbor, I think first I have to ground the conversation in that I'm Anishinaabe Kwe. So intrinsically and inherently, that means that my worldview is like completely and 100% reliant in a healthy and balanced relationship with the land and the water. In that I know I cannot exist without healthy land and healthy water. And as a woman, my responsibility as someone who carries life is to protect the land and the water. So not just for myself, but for the future generations. And I think that that's something that's really easy to forget about, especially in a city when we get our water from bottles a lot of the time, and we don't be on the shorelines of the waterways to see what's actually happening to the water all the time. In terms of my involvement with Hamilton Harbor, it really started from a place of support and kinship and sisterhood. It was actually my good friend and water walk sister, Kristen Villeburn, who discovered what's been happening down there. And for years, she was talking to people and she was emailing counselors, and she went out on a raft and put herself in danger to raise awareness about what was happening. And for years and years and years, she would discuss this with as many people who would listen. And she approached me and she's like, Danielle, like, what can we do about this? And I don't know, I feel like I'm also a single mom of 5 kids and I have a big dog, and I feel like my energy is like really limited. And what I want to put my energy towards is often creative. And like, I enjoy the term resistance, but I believe that what I'm doing is actually the opposite, where I'm moving in a direction that's forward and I'm not pushing back against anything because I have my own way of life. And, you know, despite the attempts of residential school to erase that, like, I'm still here and my kids are still here and we're learning the language, and we're planting food. You know, we are building upon ourselves the skills to live on the land in a good way. And to me, that's a victory. And I really hope that, you know, it's a time of mourning for my people, but we still have so much to celebrate in all of our young ones. And that's why we do the work, because I cannot imagine a world without healthy water. And it boggles my brain sometimes. Like, I encourage each and every one of you to go to the Hamilton Harbor and see what is going on down there. Spend time there, go down there for like 14 days in a row and experience what is happening to the water and sit with the water. Water is alive. I heard that tonight. I heard someone say that, and it definitely is, and that it carries a spirit with it of life-giving force. And we carry that within ourselves too. And when we align ourselves with those life-giving forces, we tend to recognize that there's more to the world than what's being presented to us as the only truth and the only reality. You know, this desire, this rampant need to extract all the time, to make money. Like, what is actually the point of this except to put money in the pockets of the people at the highest of these chains? And everybody else suffers, particularly Indigenous people, because we're so connected to the water. And my friend Kristen got really sick from spending so much time on the water in the harbor. And we know through our observational skills, like our traditional ecological knowledge, we know that when our bodies react in a certain way to the environment that we're living in, if that's a negative reaction, there's obviously something negative going on with the water and the land. So we trust that. And, you know, there's countless consultations and countless studies and countless, all these things that Hamilton City Council is trying to do to actually dissuade from talking about what the real issue is. And it's this careless nature, this like lack of responsibility to the land and the water. And it's on City Council's shoulders, like what is happening to the water. And this refusal to acknowledge is infuriating. And, you know, like I was saying earlier, my energy is so limited that I have to choose what I want to do with it. So in not resisting and in moving forward in a way that gives energy to my people, to my kids, to myself, and to the water, we talked about doing the Hamilton Harbor Water Walk. So for 4 years, we walked 44 kilometers around the circumference of the harbor. The first year we did it over 3 days, and we walked about 12 kilometers a day. And that was a lot of fun. But then we started hearing about how Grandma Josephine Mandamin-Ba walked 44 kilometers in 1 day. And if you don't know about Grandmother Josephine, please Google her. She is someone that I look up to and respect immensely. And although she's passed on to the spirit world, I know that she's still with us when we do these walks and when we do this work. So acknowledging Grandmother Josephine for these water walks and for showing us how to do it. So the last 3 years, yeah, we ended up doing it all on the same day, because we're like, if Grandma Josephine can do it, so can we. And it was really beautiful experience, and it was really difficult. Walking so close to cars, just like kind of flying by us on like the highway. And a lot of our walkers actually got bronchial infections. And we believe it's related to all of that time being so close to the water for so long. And, you know, the thing about it was that it was always a core group of maybe 10, 11, 12 folks. And the people that we would walk by a lot of the time would kind of know what we were doing. But walking through the industrial sector was kind of interesting because Port Authority had like a truck following us. I guess they thought that we were up to something. But we were just like trying to pray for the water, you know, and sing songs for the water, because that's what we know as relationship building and recognizing the life inside of the water. So walking around and getting to know people and talking about it. And everyone that we talked to knew exactly what we were talking about, that there's something wrong with the water in the harbor. Fast forward, maybe about 6 months after the water walk ended, and then the story broke from a reporter. I actually forget his name, but he got a Freedom of Information request to actually uncover that Hamilton knew about a sewage leak into the harbor the entire time we were walking. And it was upsetting, you know, of course, but I think our job is to like continue remembering that our focus is on the water and talking to the water and praying for the water and letting the water know that we're still there. And we don't think that it's just some empty resource meant to sustain us. But we ended up talking back anyway. And we held a community meeting at the Hamilton Regional Indian Center. And, you know, afterwards, I believe it was Councillor Nan motion to have City Council apologize to the Hamilton Harbor Water Walkers. And we just wouldn't have it. We wouldn't accept it because it seemed a bit little too late, like too little too late. And that if they were actually sorry, we would invite them to the water to say sorry to the water themselves. So in this action, we personified the water and we made the water something that the Hamilton City Councilors had to actually apologize to. And that's so foreign for a lot of people to like speak to water and be like, I'm sorry, you know? So it was a really great opportunity to kind of get those folks out of their natural way, the way that they just kind of exist, right? And to shake it up for them and be like, there are other ways to see the world. The work is still ongoing. Apparently, I think another consultation just finished about the water. But what I really want to impart to all of you is that we each have a responsibility to do what we can to protect the water. And it can start by acknowledging that the water is alive. If you're using water for your tea in the morning or your coffee, say like, thank you. Like, thank you for keeping me alive. Thank you for making me my coffee this morning, you know, because maybe if we started talking about it in the sense of like water being like the main ingredient for coffee, people might actually be like, this is important. I'm just joking. But I really do feel that, you know, we need to start seeing the water as a living life source. And I think COVID-19 has impacted our ability to continue doing the work of gathering and resisting in big crowds. And I do think that there's opportunities for us to continue doing this, but until that time, I want to encourage all of you to build a personal relationship with the water. And then encourage 5 people in your circle to build a personal relationship with the water. Because even when you see how interconnected things are, like the wetlands to the sprawl to like all of these things, it really comes down to how people relate to the land and the water, whether it's something that we own or something that we're in a relationship with. And when we switch the thinking from ownership or conservation to a relationship and self-sustaining and reciprocity, then that's when things will actually start to shift. Because I think that otherwise this mindset of ownership prevents us from having a healthy and balanced relationship with that which sustains us the most. I've been chatting for a while and I'm really excited to hear from the other speakers as well. So I'll kind of just wrap it up and say thanks to everyone for coming in. Yeah.
Thank you, Danielle. I think especially like what you've said, and you've joined us before to say it before about building a relationship with the water. Like as we have this conversation, I don't think when we were necessarily engaging with sprawl for the first time when we were engaging with the Ancaster wetland as a 350 group, like we came in with the frameworks that we had been passed down to us and the ones kind of that people were talking about. Like this is the language the conservation authority is using. This is the language that our politicians are using. And as newer folks to some of these issues, although we do have some folks who have been doing environmental organizing for quite a bit longer than I've been around, but for myself and some of the newer folks, we came in, you know, not necessarily unaware or biased. And I think not necessarily understanding that we were coming in with a framework. We were coming in with an idea of a structure in mind and taking a step back and saying, well, what really do we need to be doing here? Is it just about stopping this wetland from being moved, or is it about really rethinking our relationship? And so speaking to us has helped us kind of talk as organizers, and we hope other folks on the call also can kind of take that moment to reflect and to build a relationship with their water. Speaking of which, we also do have Makaśa Looking Horse with us tonight, I believe. And there's some incredible work that you're involved in, Makaśa, regarding the formerly Nestle Waters bottling plant, and some of the work you and some folks from your community are doing to rematriate that plant, as well as, push back and resist this privatization of water. Are you okay to share with us some of the details about that?
Yeah. So hi, Ian. Hi, Danielle and Skyler. I work with Danielle very closely, and I had Skyler on our show. So yeah, me and Danielle are coworkers, so I know these people pretty well, and we work in the same realm. But Sego Sorgwego Makaśa Gets Ginegahaga Niwagohonjora Wakatahuni, Six Nations Nita Wageno. I am Lakota and Mohawk Wolf from Six Nations. I'm 24 years old, and I go to McMaster University. I am I'm the host of Oneganos Let's Talk Water, and I am the youth lead for the Oneganos Water is Life project that's on Six Nations for like the past 3 years. And I have a lot of other titles, like I've been a Sundance leader for a lot of majority of my life, and then I have a big responsibility to both of my cultures because, anyways, to both my cultures, because my father's a chief and Lakota chief, and then my mom's a matriarch in our society. So big responsibilities there. And a lot of people ask me, like, how did I start? And really it starts from there. Like, water work kind of starts from all the way through my ancestors and my matriarchs and my and the women in my family, because like women are so connected to the water, and we have a special connection to water because water protects our babies when they're in the womb. And so we have to reciprocate that relationship and realize that water is our first environment to everybody. And water is in our creation story, and we give thanks to the waters. And every time we wake up in a Thanksgiving address, we give thanks to everything that's outside, basically. So water is really integrated into our culture, and is a big thing, because I mean, it's a life giver, just like women are. And it's been here. It's an old spirit that's been here since the earth was created. And it's that same water that we need to take care of. And it's extremely important because, like, we can't live without water. So any kind of water source we have to protect at all costs. And it's kind of just like common sense to protect water and protect land. But water is now, like, what Triton is doing, what we're recently fighting, is now being stolen Wall Street and being valued the same as oil and gold. And I think we can, like, think about what has happened before with any other actions for saving land and water, like in Standing Rock, and the brutal force that the government has put towards Indigenous peoples anytime, like Oka, like Standing Rock, just to make some money. And to know that water's on that same scale is a really scary reality that we're living in right now. It's insanely scary. And we know what they do to protect money and oil. And so that's going to come down the chain of how people have to protect water with the same heart of, like, and just like, and eventually, like, yeah, it's going to come down to that, because people think that water is not a human right and that it should be bought and all of this other nonsense. It is a really scary reality. So I just wanted to put those things out there. And not only that, but but just to know that what our situation is, like right now, we have less than 2% of fresh water in the entire world. A large portion of that water is in Canada. Large portion of that is Indigenous treaties, water land. Well, really, water wasn't even in our treaties. So originally it was all supposed to be like native governed, which it's not, which like blatantly stole and all of this other stuff. But yeah, that's, so I started working on the water project. And so I found out that our waters are extremely polluted in the Grand River and our local creeks and our lakes and our 5 Great Lakes. And I also learned that there's companies like Nestle taking water from our treaty territory for $500 a permit and making millions and millions off of it, and then selling it back to our community that is in a water crisis right now because only 10% of our community is hooked up to the water treatment plant. And so there's a lot of majority of our community is, it doesn't have access to clean drinking water or has no running water within their households, and has a huge issue because through our water project, we found out there's 5 different kinds of heavy metals. And then just to give in perspective that Indigenous peoples have no running water on 6 nations, like what that means for our daily lives, and that even though that 6 Nations is by Hamilton and is by Caledonia and Toronto, that we still have this issue. And so that we can think about all of the other communities that have the same issue, but like don't have the resources that 6 Nations does. And so that's why it's important for 6 Nations to stand up for water and one of the reasons. And then so, I mean, there's like a lot of First Nations communities that don't have access to clean drinking water whatsoever. So when I learned about those types of things, and I learned that Nestle was taking 3.6 million liters out of our aquifer for free, basically, and with no consequences and without the consent of our community or our leadership, I asked the clan mothers and our traditional leadership and the chiefs on what I should do, and they said have a meeting. So I had a meeting with the community and did what the community wanted me to do, which was have a water ceremony and then take a bus up to Nestle and let them know that we didn't agree with what they were doing and we want them to stop taking our water and get off our land, essentially. And so that's what we did. And there was about 500 people in attendance, and we have a strong community, which I'm super grateful for, who helped us with that action. And then throughout that year, I let the community know and their chiefs and clan mothers, and then they wanted to put a cease and desist against Nestle. And so we put a cease and desist against them and handed it to the CEO in the summertime. And I walked out their private property with clan mothers and other leaderships in our community and handed the CEO the cease and desist and read it clearly to them. And they were afraid because there was cops there and there was SUVs and people protecting them. And it was kind of scary for me, but I was just ensured by my clan mothers and traditional leadership that this is our rightful land and that they can't kick us off our own land, essentially. So that was reassuring. And so we read the cease and desist to them and they took it. And so with all the pressure, I guess, with 6 Nations and other communities to the water and the Nestle plants, they left North America, which is a huge win. But then they sold and got Triton they sold to Triton, which is another water bottling company that is now selling stocks, which is worse than what Nestle was doing. And now in the progress, what we're trying to do right now is get another cease and desist towards Triton. Do the like same thing, like tell them like they're not allowed to do that with our water. And like I touched on before in our treaties, like it doesn't even say that any kind of agreement with waters. So like we never had an agreement with settlers and that they could take any kind of water and have any kind of governance and say over any kind of bodies of water. So essentially that's what you're supposed to ask like our people what they can take, what kind of water they can take, and we're supposed to have governance over that water. But like a lot of other things that that has happened that didn't happen, and blatantly like stealing and with like having no kind of respect like they first agreed to like with any kind of treaties that we've had. So yeah, we're just, I mean, like it's really hard. I guess I'm just going to ask like the chiefs and clan mothers like the next steps, like what we should do with Triton, and then do whatever they want us to do, because the reason why we're doing this, like I said before, like our community is in a water crisis and there's not a lot of water left, fresh water left in the world. And we need to protect every kind of water that we have, because like I said, like it's depleting fast, and it's scary looking in the future and looking at our nieces and nephews and grandchildren's faces and not knowing if they will have any water in the future. Like, what will it be like? Will they have to pay $50 for a bottle of water? And like, is that sustainable? That's not sustainable. What it should be like is that you should have free access to clean drinking water in your household, and you should have a well that water comes out of it for free. Like that's the world that it should always be. And yeah, not when people think that that water is depleting fast, they think it's because of like what one single person can do, but it's really all of these companies selling stocks in advance and selling water bottles, and like it's just big companies and big corporations that aren't being held accountable for taking the water. And that really needs to happen, is just holding those companies accountable. And I think that's where allyship can come in and hold those companies accountable, and like pressure your government systems to not take any, like make them not make water like how it's supposed to be, like free, and not be sold to $400 or $500 permit and drained every kind of aquifer out there. Because it is scary, like I said, and there are places in the world where drought is happening, where like deserts are becoming more frequent because there's no water. Like China, for example, it's happening there, and South Africa, it's happening there, and all of these different places in the world, it's already happening. So we need to protect our water. And I think, I mean, Indigenous people have did that for a long time with Landback and water back. It's always any kind of fight that Indigenous peoples had. It's always about and it's always about saving the land and the interest of our future generations and saving the water. And yeah, that's what Indigenous peoples, any kind of fight that we've ever had, that's what it's about essentially. So we've always, like, it was before Greta, before any of this, it was always, we have done this for essentially centuries. And it's nothing new. And we just need to come together and unite and have a and look out for a future generation, because it's not just Indigenous water crisis, it's a global crisis. I'll let Skyler talk more.
Thank you so much, Makaśa, for sharing that. And yeah, Skyler, I see you've turned on your camera. So we'll throw it over to you. But I mean, when I think of from sprawl to Landback, it's hard for me to not have 1492 pop up in my head as a great example of alternatives to sprawl. Would you mind telling us a little bit about, what that idea means to you and some of the work you've been engaged in?
Yeah, I mean, following Danielle and Makaśa is going to be quite difficult. I mean, I'm humbled by these two incredible women and the work that they continue to do. Like, it is, they are absolutely an inspiration to folks. But yeah, so Landback is, approaching a year of, Haudenosaunee people holding the land at 1492 Landback Lane now. On July 19th, it'll be one complete turn around the sun here. And so it's, we're very grateful in these, 350 days or so here that we're almost up to, that we've had the help that we have had. And I mean that Makaśa touched on, what allyship looks like, and, supporting work that, Danielle and Makaśa are doing. Woodland Cultural Center comes to mind right away with the work that they're doing around residential school stuff. It's like those kinds of organizations that are continuing to push to have, our voices heard in a way that is, because I think for the last at least 50 years here in the nations, like with all of the residential school excavations or archaeological excavations that are happening to, uncover the secrets that we've been talking about for the last 50 years. And so I think that it is high time now that we, certainly for folks at Landback, like, this is what we want to be able to say, like when we're talking about missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, when we're talking about the 60s scoop and the residential school survivors, and now we're talking about the millennium scoop. Like these are issues that are happening today. And so if we want to be able to invite these people back home, we need to be able to have, clean drinking water. We need to have land that is fit for people, like not covered in concrete and asphalt. Like Ongohoe people, we don't live like our Western brothers and sisters. We don't cover everything in concrete and asphalt for the sake of progress. This isn't what progress looks like for our people. And so we want to make sure that we're doing everything that we possibly can to make sure that when we say, like, we care about missing and murdered Indigenous women, that we have a place to be able to say you can come home to. Because the only city or town across the country that has, got nothing but smaller in the last 150 years, only one of those, the only places that have gotten smaller are reserves. Every big city, every small town has grown exponentially over these last 150, 200 years. And so we want to be able to say, what, there is a place here for you in our community and within our nations. And so I think that the work that the Makaśa and Danielle both do around water is something that is like, it all echoes the same thing, that we need to be able to come together. We need to be able to amplify each other's voices, because in a time where these realities that Indigenous people across the country have had to live with, the trauma and the hardships, like, those are things that are finally starting to come to light. And I think if we are able to make that stand and make that stand together with the help of our brothers and sisters in all of those big cities and small towns, to say, like, we should have the right to clean drinking water. We should have the right to our lands. Certainly on the heels of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission calls to action, and most certainly after now that we're talking about the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, like this is absolutely an imperative time that we start pushing government, that we start pushing these, whether that's provincially or federally or municipally even. Like in the last, when was that, in April 20th, the Confederacy chiefs here at Six Nations called for a moratorium on development. And then was echoed by the elected band council shortly thereafter, that there needs to be an absolute moratorium on development, because the Grand River was not meant to be able to be home to 20 million people. You know, and like if you look at the Places to Grow Act and the Planning Act for Ontario, like these are things that, like this is a new spin on an old song and dance, you know, that looks to push that massive amount of development. Like, you know, you look back, you know, 200 years ago, you see, you know, advertising in England for settlement of our lands, and now we see that same type of advertising, only now it's pushed on, you know, these multi-billion-dollar corporations to develop, and whether that's resource extraction, like what Makaśa was talking about with water, or whether you're talking about these massive, like 1,400 home developments that we're sitting on right now. Like this, like it is that push to have more and more and more settlement of Indigenous lands without any and I was going to say consultation, but now that we're talking about the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, UNDRIP is like that talks about consent and the consent of our people. And so if it goes far beyond what consultation and accommodation should be. That's about consent. And there isn't a soul in our community. I don't care whether you come from the elected band council system or the Confederacy system. Like all of them have said, like, these are our lands. It doesn't matter what family you come from in Six Nations. We all understand that these are our lands. And so when we say no, like, we should not have to be criminalized. We should not have to be put in jail. We should certainly not have to get shot at like we were on 2 occasions over this last year. And so like this has been the response from Canada and from Ontario to deal with their Indian problem. And so like, and when I say like this is a new spin on an old song and dance, that is exactly what I mean. This isn't something from 200 years ago or 500 years ago. We want to be able to invite those women and those girls home that have been missing. You know, we want to be able to say to those parts of our nations that have been taken from our communities in this 60 scoop and the residential school survivors, we want to be able to say, come home. But we want to be able to say that you can come home to a community that can grow and thrive, and so that you can have the same opportunities on reserve as you can off. Because we're not asking for anything more than any other community. We just want the ability to be able to grow and thrive. We want the ability to have clean drinking water, or running water would be an amazing thing for a lot of families to have in our communities. And so I guess now, you know, with all of the Canada Day stuff coming up, like, you know, it's a moment of reflection for me to think about, you know, my dad telling me those stories about, you know, my dad never went to residential school. And so I remember talking to him about it and saying like that, you know, he'd never went, so he didn't understand what those kids went through. But also he told the story of, you know, what it looked like hiding in the bush when that truck came down the road looking to snatch those kids off the street on their way home from school. From my grandmother talking to him and his sister and brother and telling them what to do when that truck came around the corner. Like, you run into that bush and you go in there and you run as far and fast as you can, because this is this is what it took to survive. And so I don't care what family you come from. I don't care what Indigenous community you come from across the country, what Indigenous nation you come from across this country. You have been affected by, and you are a survivor of those schools. And so for us to be able to stand together and say, absolutely, like there needs to be some justice here, and some real justice, not a couple of prime minister tears. I don't want to see another big grandstanding apology. I want to see some action. I want to be able to say to my kids and my grandkids that we made a stand together and we made sure that our community's voices were heard. Because like right now, all we've been getting is the same rhetoric over and over and over again, and these calls for apologies, and the time for talk is done. You know, we've had commission after commission. We've had, you know, the TRC stuff, the IPRWASH inquiries, like all of those inquiries that we've gone through, all of the talks, all of the time for action is now. And I think Indigenous communities across the country are starting to understand that if we stand together, there's the heights are unlimited. And so but it takes all of us, and we certainly do love and appreciate the help of those allies who understand what it is that we've been going through for these last ever since those big boats landed on our shores. And so, you know, I just like to wrap up with saying, you know, a big nyawa to everybody. Thank you to everybody that is, you know, helped everybody at Landback Lane, and continues to push for, you know, clean drinking water, for, you know, bringing those children home that are, you know, in the bottom of some unmarked grave somewhere outside of a residential school. You know, like those stories that, you know, we've been talking about at least for the last 50 years here in Six Nations, and, you know, I'm sure for 100 years before that. And so I'm really grateful that, you know, people are finally starting to listen to those stories that people have said. I guess I wish that, you know, governments would stop talking about it as a cultural genocide. There was nothing cultural genocide about it. You know, if they would have found rattles and drums in the bottom of that hole out west, like, then, you know, I'd understand what you mean by cultural genocide. This was not this was a genocide of our people. Those were our children. Those were our community members. They could have been chiefs. They could have been clan mothers. They could have been, you know, community leaders in one way or another. And those were stripped from our people. And so I'm really grateful for groups like yourselves that have, you know, reached out to folks like Danielle and Makaśa, because like these are the women that are leading the charge. And, you know, like, as coming from the matriarchal society as we do, like, these women that have worked so hard to push so much, like, this is where we take our direction from. And I'm really grateful that, you know, I have my mom and my aunties that are around me that make sure that we're doing this in the best possible way that we can. And so, you know, to everybody.
Thank you so much. And a thank you to Skyler, to Makaśa, and to Danielle. I think all of us here in Hamilton, I think we've been having a conversation about this survey and how to fill out the survey and how do we grow. And it's really the, you know, how much of this land is city council allowed to sell off to developers, or how much can become Amazon warehouses? And I think we really need, and what we're hoping that we could really spark tonight is that it's not a question of how much, it's a question of what are we doing instead. It's clear that there needs to be a big transformation. This Stop Sprawl, you know, coalition that has started, you know, has had some wins already, and this is a chance to embed better relations with our water, with our land, and with all of the communities around us, the nations around, the Indigenous nations around us as well, and how those can be part of that movement moving forward. So as maybe folks on this call are filling out their surveys in the coming days, if you are a resident of Hamilton, you can also find it online. You have an opportunity to submit feedback. You have an opportunity to suggest an option 3. So we're encouraging everyone to say no to sprawl, to stop giving this out. This is also an opportunity to challenge our municipal leaders to, incorporate land back or incorporate stewardship or come up with plans and do the consultation and show willingness. Skyler, like you were saying, for governments to act. And I think we can, one thing, I hope it's not all we do, but one thing we can do, maybe that feels very proximate, is to think about that as we're filling out our surveys. But yeah, I don't know if other folks have maybe some questions. We've gone a little bit over, but if folks have a few questions, or Steph, this is generally when you take over from me. I apologize to everyone for being a bit rambly tonight. I'm very warm, as I'm sure many of you are. And I think this really speaks to, just our access as people. Sorry, I'm too hot. Steph, are you comfortable to take it from here?
I'm comfortable to take it from here. And generally we do go into a question and answer period now. We recognize that we were aiming to end at this time, but I believe that we've had some of the most inspirational speakers that I've personally ever been privy to hear. Thank you again so much, all 3 of you, for coming out. Most of the questions that have been raised during the Q&A are specific to sprawl in Hamilton and addressing them through City Council, which is wonderful and great questions to have. I don't want to put Danielle or Makaśa, I apologize if I'm saying that wrong, or Skyler on the spot here, so it's up to your comfort level. But I'm wondering if anyone has questions to those 3 about either about sprawl or about what we've all heard from them tonight, because none of the questions that have come up are specific to that. And if I am putting everyone on the spot, I apologize if that makes you uncomfortable. So if no one does have questions at this time, I can go to the questions we received during the question and answer. But I will keep an eye up for hands up if anyone would like to do that, including Danielle, Makaśa, and Skyler. If any of you want to ask questions of each other, that's fine as well, obviously. So just take a look in the chat here. So I'll start off with one of the questions that we received during the Q&A, just to get things, during the seminar, just to get things rolling here. And then I'll keep an eye out to see if we have any questions specific to what I just suggested. But one of the questions came from Stan. If water is such a sacred element to us all, how do we transfer this belief and attitude to our governments? And sorry, Stan, I just spoke that question for you, but if you want to expand on that at all, you're more than welcome to. Would any of the presenters like to speak to that? Or if not, we can move to Dawn or one of our own. Skyler, I see you're unmuted. Would you like to speak?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, sure. Sorry, I didn't realize I was unmuted.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think we've done a lot of advocacy over the last year here to try and push government to let there be some other response other than a massive police response. So far over this last year, OPP have spent $20 million policing folks at Landback Lane. There's been just the recent access to information request that was received by APTN that's seen CSIS, the Canadian spy agency, that has deemed myself and others at Landback Lane a threat to national security. That the level of intrusion on people's lives, the type of criminalization that has happened is absolutely disgusting. And this is a group of 20 unarmed people basically singing Kumbaya around the fire for the last year, and it has cost 20 million taxpayer dollars in order to fund that massive policing effort. And so anything that is not that from police or from these politicians. I mean, you know, we've seen Premier Ford come out very, very much so against everything that we've said and done. You know, we've seen absolutely nothing from Carolyn Bennett or Mark Miller's office in terms of trying to look for a peaceful resolution to all of this. And so right now, for folks that want to be able to push to see your MPs or MPPs speak up against what is happening in Indigenous communities across the country, it is absolutely time to start doing that, whether that's letter writing campaign and email blasts and the, you know, pickets out in front of the provincial offices or federal offices. And like, these are all things that people can do. And again, like, it is still in the middle of a pandemic. It is still, you know, really hard to gather in these big groups. But I mean, you know, but hear the stories, you know, like reach out to Ungwahome people and find out what you can do to help. Because like, for each person, it's their own capacity as to what they feel comfortable doing. You know, for some people that have supported Landback Lane, you know what, for some folks that's, you know, throwing $20 into the GoFundMe legal defense campaign that we've had going. You know, for other people that, you know, came down with us on day one, that are, you know, ally folks that, you know, have came down that day and, you know, have called this home ever since. You know, like these are to each person. It is up to them to decide what their capacity is in terms of what that solidarity looks like. And holding government accountable for all of that is absolutely important.
Thank you so very much, Skyler. I put you on the spot there, but I think you answered that quite well. Good job. Danielle or Makaśa, would you like to speak to that at all? Danielle, I see you unmuted there.
Yeah, actually, and I think it's really interesting the way that the state responds to different actions that are taken, right? Because I think the only thing that the state holds sacred is money, right? So when you see the sort of police resistance that's happening at Landback Lane versus nothing that's happening for the water walk, I think what's happening here is that the state recognizes that an action such as what's happening at Landback Lane and this reclamation of land and territory impedes their ability to be the only people justifying the use of land for taking extraction. And like, so that interference with their money is a big thing for them. And then, so when you see things like the water walk happening, where it's like very quiet, you know, we're relating with the water, there's no money spent on it because we're not interfering with the economic development of the area and things like that, right? So I think that's also something to consider, because, you know, it's not that I don't think that they're not like humans, like, is that I think that perhaps what's happening is that they don't have necessarily the empathy or the sense of responsibility or the relationship making sort of things going on like we do. And so it might be easy to expect that they can hold something like water sacred. I don't know that they can, because it doesn't seem like that right now. And until they start to act differently, I'm just going to assume that it's not something that they're capable of.
Thanks very much for that perspective, Danielle. That's very thought-provoking, and I appreciate that. Makaśa just said that her computer's about to die. So Makaśa, do you want to speak to this question or say anything more to us before you don't have an opportunity?
There is, I mean, I forget what the question was, but to answer Don's question about the moratorium, I read the moratorium that the Haudenosaunee Confederacy put out, and it mentions the waters in there. So I read that to the Triton people. And I was trying to copy and paste it into the chat, but it won't let me. I can maybe like read it real fast. It says the Haudenosaunee Confederacy at the Grand River has put in place a moratorium on the development in the Haldeman Tract. No development can proceed along the Haldeman Tract without consent of the Haudenosaunee. We understand that we share these lands with our allies, and we agree to uphold the agreements between our people and live in peace, friendship, and trust. Our vision is the future is self-determined, based in our inherent right to protect our lands and for future generations of Haudenosaunee children. The Haudenosaunee intend to exercise our jurisdiction over our lands and waters in a way that maintains the delicate balance between creation and humans, focusing on sustainability and responsiveness to climate change to protect our waterways and ecological sensitive areas. The moratorium builds our land rights statement 2006 to end the exploitation of lands and resources along the tract and marks a shift on land stewardship within a portion of the traditional territories of the Haudenosaunee. So that was a moratorium that just went out. And so I probably read that to try and along with the cease and desist. Yeah, okay, great. Someone put the moratorium there. Yeah, and I'm not too sure what that question was beforehand, but my computer is at 1%, so it might die anytime soon.
It's okay. And now I do have it, but I forget. 1 second here. You have it on your tongue there, Dan, since it was your question. Oh, geez, I'm sorry.
So yeah, the moratorium
sorry.
have set up a protect the tract, which is the website that I just seen in the chat there. Definitely go on and check it out. A bunch of the folks that have been doing that work, we all just participated in a kind of the source to the mouth of the river canoe trip over the last week here. We had a bit of a celebration last weekend as we made it to Caledonia Dam from Elora Gorge, which is, up kind of straight west of Toronto. And so it is, they do some amazing work. And so that website, and they also have a Facebook, and sure if there's a bunch of social media stuff, and they do some amazing stuff there as well. But also let me just plug really quickly though, the July 3rd at Ganastado, which was the 2006 reclamation here in Six Nations, because this isn't the first time Six Nations has reclaimed some land. 1492 is the sequel. And so in 2006, there was a large land reclamation. And the moratorium that we were just talking about was announced on April 20th, which was a day that a lot of people, including myself, were involved with some Six Nations when the OPP raided the camp at Ganastado, which was the former Douglas Creek Estates. And again, quite similar to what happened on August 5th and again on October 22nd, on days that we were shot at with rubber bullets and tasered and dragged from our lands, a huge swell of Six Nations people came out. But this coming July 3rd, at Ganastado, right at the corner of 6th Line and Argyle Street, there's a concert being planned. And so I encourage for all the folks from this webinar to go and certainly come out and enjoy there's Logan Stotts and Derek Miller and Jace Martin, Juno winners, and Tom Wilson is coming out. It should be an amazing day of music, and a lot of these people like Derek Miller, Tom Wilson, Phil Davis is another one, have all gotten arrested for simply coming to Landback Lane and playing their music, and are saying, this is still important to us regardless of what consequences there are. We're going to come to Ganastado this July 3rd to really help to lift some of those spirits that have really been struggling in this last month here, as all these traumatic things that are starting to come to light and in the ways that they are. And so I encourage you to come out and see and talk and hear the stories. And, you know, like it should be an amazing day to be able to really bring some folks together. And again, like I understand that it is COVID times and all that. And so I hope that people can respect social distancing and wear masks and all that kind of stuff. But we are doing it kind of drive-in theater style, so you can pull up in your car and listen to the music and hear some of the speakers, and it should be an amazing day. So yeah, July 3rd at 3:00. Come on out.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Skyler. I think that event sounds amazing. I did see it on your Facebook page, and I believe we are including that in our resource document because I think that's a fantastic idea. So thank you for setting that up or hosting that, or however you prefer to be associated with that. That's wonderful. Before I move on, we do have another question from Brody, but I just want to make sure there's no other comments on Don's question, which was, can you help us understand the relationship between a moratorium on development and the health of the water in the Grand? I didn't know if anyone else wanted to speak to that before we moved on. Looking okay? All right, I won't assume your mic's off because,
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
This is an important point, that there is a quite relationship, because you get more land in urban zoning, you get a harder surface, and you get a lot of stormwater pollution in the Grand River watershed. It would especially be bad on the minor tributaries of the Grand River. Could destroy any life that's in them. The sheer impact of all the toxins, and it creates what's called flashiness. You tend to get worse, drought in the summer, very little flow, and massive floods in the spring. This is a result of urbanization.
Thank you very much, Mary Lou George. I'm not sure if I'm saying your name correctly, but I appreciate that input. I'm going to move on. Alex, I think you were about to say something. I do see that Brody has his hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to
Go
say,
ahead.
respecting the time of the evening,
Sure.
Brody, are you okay to ask us a question? Then we may do some closing comments, but I think beginning to wind, have a sense of where we're going.
Sure, yeah, I can be pretty quick. Can you hear me? Great. Sorry if my internet connection is a little bit bad. Thank you very much to all the speakers, Danielle, Skyler, Makaśa, and Nancy. Really appreciate you sharing some of your perspective with us. I was going to ask, I'm mindful that we're being recorded. There's been some interest in some of the communities I'm in touch with about plants and seed saving and seed sharing. I'm not sure, maybe Skyler, you would have a better sense of this in terms of Landback or in the areas around there, if there's any interest in possibly support through seeds, like seed sharing, or like, if there's like trees or something like that, like, I'm not sure. Is that something that's kind of like, really, it's just not the time right now? I don't know. I don't have much of a sense, so I was curious if you could enlighten me.
You know what, if there has been a bit of an orchard that was planted. The Ontario Federation of Labor, the OFL, have been quite active in their allyship with Landback Lane, and have went and bought a bunch of an orchard for us. Cherry trees, apple trees, and pear trees. And I think there's 25 trees in total. And yeah, those have all been planted at Landback. You need to understand, like, the destruction that happens when these massive developments roll through. It's just a bulldozer scraping everything beautiful from our mother here. And it is, I know Danielle has been and has seen what that destruction looks like. And I mean, I remember, when roads got dug up and things like that, like, people talked about this destructive nature of these, terrible Indians that are stealing land. And you know what? This is what destruction looks like. You know, like that, the road out front here, it took 4 hours, 5 hours for them to fix a hole in the road. The amount of time that it's going to take for the soil to come back, the trees, the birds, the animals to come back to the land at Landback Lane is, you know, I don't like how 1,000 years, you know, like who knows that like it's unbelievable to try and put a number on the amount of devastation that happens when these massive developments and resource extractors get hold of our land. So yes, so all to say, yes, trees, plants, whatever, absolutely bring them down, plant some stuff. And so yeah, if folks are interested, like Terry Lynn Brandt, who does the seed stuff here, like is just an amazing woman in terms of like doing all of that work around seed saving and I don't know the words even, the heirloom seeds and that like have been passed down through generations, like, and she's got them from, you know, across Turtle Island. It is absolutely an amazing gift that she continues to give to our community and to folks that come out to her. And so yes, absolutely, seeds are an amazing thing. And in terms of trees, come down, bring a maple tree, bring a pine tree, bring, you know, dig up a you know, one that's growing underneath the tree in your backyard and come down to Landback and find a spot and plant it. You know, like I could not encourage this enough.
Thank you very much. I got some ceremonial tobacco and some wild strawberries I'm thinking of too.
Nice, love it.
That's wonderful, Brody. I assume that answered your question based on the response. So very much appreciate that, Skyler, and I appreciate what you said to us as well earlier, Danielle. I'm not sure if Makaśa's still with us, but I'd like to thank her for coming out as well. I didn't think so. Her computer must have died. I also want to, I appreciate those that I've been talking to in the chat. I mentioned that I would answer your questions, but we are going to wrap up now. So thank you for being patient and accepting that I went a little bit off on this one because I felt it was important. I have just put the email, our email, in the chat box again. If you would like a question, answer to the question you shared during the chat that we didn't get to, please feel free to send it our way and we can answer it in that way. I will let Alex take over now. And if you're ready there, Alex, looks like it.
Yeah, thanks. I don't have a ton to say. Just once again, thank you to our presenters tonight for sharing their experience, for the generosity of their time, for coming and joining us, and engaging us all in, you know, what different futures can and will, if we take action, look like. This doesn't have to be abstract. So thank you again. And Danielle or Skyler, if you have any closing comments, we'd love to, you know, give you an opportunity, seeing a head shake from one. But yeah, with that said, I think that's mostly our night tonight.
Right on. I just want to say thank you, you know, to everybody, and Danielle, love you. Hi, nice seeing you. And yeah, thank you guys so much for putting this on. I really enjoyed.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining us. And if you were looking for a formal ending to kind of log out, you have that. You have that now. So thank you for everyone. Particular thank you to our speakers, and yeah, stay in touch with 1492, with the Hamilton Water Walkers, with the Stop Sprawl Coalition, and we'll be sending out a resource list to everyone who registered that has some of these events and some of the links that we talked about tonight as well. Thank you all.
Thank you, Miriam, and thanks to everyone who came out tonight. We really appreciate you joining in. I think it was important information to hear, and I'm glad that so many people were interested in hearing it. So thank you all so very much. Hi, Sue. I hope you're doing well. Miriam, hope you're doing well. I can't hear you, but I'm reading your lips as best I can.
Thank you. This was brilliant.
Thank you very
I
much.
hope you are doing well, Steph. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Good night. Hi, bye, Sue.
Bye, everybody. Have a great night. It was great to see you.